Welcome to Aligned Ambition, Authentically Kate, where we dive into the truth behind business, mindset, and well-being. I'm Kate Hansen, and I believe success should feel aligned, not exhausting. So join me for inspiring stories, some actionable insights, and the confidence to build a life on your terms. All right. Today's guest is someone I have known for a very long time. In fact, I have known him his entire life, and someone that I am really proud to be associated with. Sean is one of my younger cousins, and even though we've lived in different provinces our whole lives, pretty much most of our lives, and haven't shared a lot of our day-to-day life, I have followed his journey from afar through family updates and the occasional deep dive on LinkedIn, and it has been really inspiring to watch. He's built a really impressive path at the intersection of innovation, sustainability, and strategic leadership. Sean has worked across rare earth mining, battery recycling, sounds like the right era to be living, and tech commercialization. He's led European expansion efforts, built commercial partnerships from the ground up, and now heads business development at Torngat Metals. Did I say that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Torngat Metals, a company focused on the critical minerals that are shaping our future. He's also someone who brings real thoughtfulness and intention to his work. And I have been wanting to hear more about this journey from his mouth, as opposed to our parents kind of sharing information about each other. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Today, though, our conversation is really going to explore the seasons that stretch us and the pivots that we don't always plan for, and the mindset that it takes to move forward with clarity, even when the path isn't certain. So, Sean, we already had a second to chat. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. And thank you so much for being with me today.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So you are a very young man for the work experience that you've had up to this point. I know our family, it's my dad's side and Sean's mom's side. They are an ambitious group of individuals, all of the siblings and our grandparents. So I think we both got great examples there.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, what has been your biggest motivation or driver that kind of directed you to the work you're doing now?
I've always been interested in new technologies and innovation and, how do we solve a lot of our world's problems through technology. And I've also been endlessly curious. I've never really liked being told how things work without myself getting to figure it out on my own. And so this kind of drive of being how does that work? Let me figure this out myself. Don't get in my way. I'll do it. Don't worry. Kind of led into my career as well. I spent a lot of time in the startup space because that's kind of what it is to be in a startup. It's all figure it out for yourself. There's no prescribed way of doing things. And as soon as I got into it, I found out this is exactly what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. And I've thrived in it since.
So you enjoy it. You enjoy that not knowing yet and the curiosity that the development.
Yeah, as soon as I heard someone had did this and I have to follow what they put in place, I'm like, this doesn't sound fun anymore. I want to figure it out myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. So have you found that rubs some people the wrong way when you don't just accept what they tell you?
You have to go about it the right way. I think you can obviously tell if you're saying, well, you did it, I don't want to. It sounds very abrasive, but as long as you could take it with respect and say, no, this is great. Is there anything else I can do? Clearly, this is done. I don't need to be involved here. That's kind of the approach. But then you also have to be collaborative. It can't be me. It's how do you make sure that we all succeed together and problem solve together? It's a task that you have to do holistically as a group. And so as long as people are involved and feel like they're contributing and are contributing, then I think it always works out fine.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder, because I talk to a lot of different business owners and people who are in all levels of business. And my question is do you do goal setting? Did you set up the goal to be where you are right now? How do you just take it one opportunity at a time? How do you goal set?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I goal set in the sense that I said by this date, I want to be at this level. It's a little too difficult to do that because there's so much things out of your control that if you put that much pressure on yourself, you're just going to set yourself up to be disappointed. In reality, it's more or less each opportunity that comes, you say, well, is this going to progress me the pathway that I want to go? That could be quicker for some people, it could be longer for some others. Some people find that opportunity comes up way later in their career or life, and some find it really early on. It's all about making sure you really assess the opportunities that are presented to you in a way that, aligns with your overall long-term ambition. Again, don't set hard dates, but set expectations of where you want to be and take it opportunity at a time. Yeah.
I like that. And like, do you think about when you're looking for those guides of like whatever's guiding your decision making, is that based on your personal life of the lifestyle you want to live and your wellness, or is that based on like your curiosity in an industry? Like, what drives that?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Like you kind of have to check a good chunk of the boxes before you take an opportunity. Like maybe there is a path that sounds great um, for a new industry that you haven't been in before, and you're really interested in it, but maybe it comes at a lower pay. What does that look like for you career wise? And you also have responsibilities. There's a lot of weighing that goes into making choices, and those are also choices that have to be made with the people in your life as well. If you have a partner or family, and do you have to move places for this? All those things.
Have you ever found that you bit off more than you could chew? Like that you made a decision with the information you had, but then once you were in it, you thought, "Oh,
No, I've never had the scenario where I've bit off more than I could chew. I've definitely maybe misjudged what I was expecting from a role or a job or a task. But again, I'm always someone who's like too ambitious and too eager to do things that I like the challenge. If it's more challenging, it's almost a good thing to me.
better."
Yeah, but I've definitely, one of the things I learned early on in my career is that ambition kind of gets in your way sometimes. Like you say yes to everything. Someone comes to you with an opportunity, you go, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And then you have too much on your plate. And then you start failing at the things you said I'd do. And then you stop becoming someone who's, trustworthy. And so learning to understand what you can actually take on was a big part. And I think
Mhm.
something that I had to learn pretty early on to make sure I didn't become a flaky person.
I love that. A flaky person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also know because this is something definitely I would notice as a family member, but you made some moves professionally that involved pretty large moves, like to other country moves. And I'm just curious, like, was that an easy decision for you, or was that something that you really had to think on?
Yeah, it was, I think the timing made it a lot easier because it was just at the end of COVID and, we'd been locked up in our little apartment for a little too long. And so I was like, get me anywhere. So the decision was kind of easy, but it was also planned. Like, when I first took on that role at that startup, one of the first questions they asked, what do you want out of this? And I said, I always wanted to work in Europe at one point. Is if there's ever a chance that there's a, role in Europe, could I be considered for it? And I was lucky enough that the company like remembered that because that was like 2 years, like it was like the first week, and then 2 years later they said, you said this one time, and I was like, I did say that. And it was really good that I had a company that thought of me for it. So yeah, it was something that I had already thought about, and would have expressed and I expressed my interest in it. So it did pan out to be correct, but to be the right move and the right timing. And the decision was easy because of the timing, though. Like I think it would have been harder nowadays to do it again.
Yeah, so then I'm also curious because you can make incorrect assumptions, but I was thinking, how else do I know that I'm really proud of Sean? And I was thinking, our family group chat, I don't even know, I think there's like 50 of us in there. But you have posted the most incredible photos of different trips you've been on, and whether they're work related or not, I'm not
Mhm.
always sure. But I just think you've obviously made that a priority, traveling and
Yeah.
seeing the world. Was that intentional? Is that one of your drivers?
No, it wasn't actually. I think before I moved countries, I'd only ever been to like 2, 3 countries total, maybe 4. I don't know. Now I've hit 23, I think. And it was more or less just something that came out of the move. I was traveling a lot for work, and I found going places where the language isn't the same, the culture is different, really made life exciting again. And so I really
Mm.
prioritized going places because I found things became boring over time. You get older and you get in a routine, and it's just the same old. And so going somewhere new where everything is foreign always felt like really exciting, and it really something that I always enjoyed doing after experiencing it. Yeah, it's one of the things you have to experience first before you can tell you have a drive for it.
Yeah. So I know I don't want to say too much without people's permission in advance, but I know for both of your parents, one of your parents I think of as extremely creative, and
Hmm.
then the other one is like very logical and very good with like
Hmm.
details.
Hmm.
Do you find just with like your upbringing and with, it sounds like our personalities are a little similar. And when you're traveling, do you find that you get sparks or ideas that help you be better at innovation and supporting these startups?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I've found, especially working abroad, I've learned to think differently. We have a very, especially being in Toronto, there's quite a high grind culture, and then you go to other countries where it doesn't have that same grind culture, but you find that they're just as efficient at work. And so, understanding, where to be efficient, how to change your work style, how to communicate differently, especially when you're communicating with people who English is a second language for the most part. And a lot of that really rubbed off on me as being, okay, you need to change the way you talk here. You need to change the way you think about this, especially when working in these different areas. And you need to respect your off time too, because clearly you can get enough done with taking some breaks too. Yeah.
I've always found it like comforting to my nervous system when I see things can be done in a different way. Like to
Oh yeah.
see that more relaxed culture, I'm like, oh, that is possible for me. Like
Yeah.
even if nothing around me has changed, I'm aware. So now I
Yeah.
can make it better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the other thing that I kind of like brought up to you, even asking you to talk with me on this podcast is like your experiences with challenge because you've had an exciting journey and
Mhm.
because you've been willing to take risks and I think a lot of them have paid off. What have been like the challenges that stick out to you the most that you kind of had to overcome through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, it's kind of double-edged sword. I really enjoy, the uncertainty that comes with the industries I'm in, and
Yeah.
scaling stuff up. But there's also means there's lots of challenges. There's things that you can't predict happen, and then you have to figure out how to solve it in ways that no one's ever thought of before, or ways that no
Mhm.
one that around you knows how to do. And you have to, again, your end goal is to solve the problem. And I think, you know before I got into working in startups, I was in academia, and I also worked at another company before that where I was a bit older and had a lot more structure. And so I came in with a lot of ideas, thinking every company, every single thing is perfectly ordered, everything is already done. In academia, if you want a new position, you apply to this, and then there was you'd hear back in 2 weeks, and you knew exactly what was going to happen. And then in the other company I worked at, they had a procedure for everything, which is what you want as a business. And so whatever task you got to do, you just go read the procedure, and you did those steps and you were done. And I remember at my first startup job, I was a ninth employee at this company, and I joined. They gave me a task like, you got to do this. I'm like, how do I do that? They're like, that's up to you to figure out. um, and they're like, you just have to get it done by this date. And I was like, okay. And part of that was that, one, it was fun because there's a challenge, but two, it was like, holy crap, how do I do this? I don't even know where to start, and I have to get it done in a week, a month, etc. And part of it is also, even when you did get it done, you're like, was this even done right? I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
no one knows because no one there is there to tell you that it was done right. And sometimes you have to face the consequences of, you thought it was done right, and then 6 months later you found out you did it completely wrong, and you have to figure out solve your problems. But overall, all these challenges that came up kind of taught me that, uncertainty is inevitable. You need to plan that failure is going to happen. You can't plan for 100% success.
Mhm.
And the only way you will be successful is if you are ready to deal with the failures that come along with it. And how you do that is really just making sure that each decision you make, you've kind of thought out the results that could come from it as much as you can. Obviously, you can't predict everything, but you need to understand what could happen. What's the risk of the bad things that you know of that could happen? How willing are you to take on that risk? And what happens? What will you do when that inevitable, maybe not inevitable, like that the bad side thing does happen? What are you going to do? And kind of scenario planning every single decision you make has been a way for me to deal with all the challenges that come my way in a professional sense.
Yeah, like I like to tell people when I'm working with different individuals going through a lot of change or challenge that you can prepare for impact. So I have
Hmm.
this like approach to like based on the hardest things you've been through, what did they teach you so that you can do better next time?
Yeah.
Like with the overcommitment, which every business owner I know has dealt with, it's like, okay, but what did you learn from that? So then the next time you won't do it. Maybe you give yourself
Hmm.
more structure or more buffer between projects.
Yeah.
Like there's little things, but it's like we know it and then we go ahead and just keep making the same mistake and wondering why
Yeah.
we're so stressed out.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. No, it's all about making sure you actually, and it is tempting to make the same mistake because it always, you do something new and you're like, that didn't turn out that bad. Maybe it'll turn out better for me this time. But you really got to say, no, no, no. It's all about making sure you plan for the bad things to happen, and how do you make sure that you'll survive them? Because wins are great, but they do pass, and you still have to keep going. So the only thing that will ever
Yeah.
stop you is a loss, not a win, right? And so you have to make sure the losses can be dealt with. Yeah.
Have you ever experienced a loss that made you like doubt yourself, where you kind of shamed or guilt yourself? You know, we can be our hardest critics. Have you ever found that it really like took you out a bit?
Yeah, I mean, the first startup in the battery cycling one, we had this problem where, since we're a startup with a new tech, a lot of customers wanted to see the technology, like the plant, the facility operating. And so we kind of had this chicken and egg scenario that we wanted to have customers before we built a plant because that's the best way to do it. But then the customers would only come if the plant was built. And so we had a plant, and so we built our plant. We raised money and built it, and it worked. But then my role was on the commercial side, and I had to make sure it had business. So there was, because of the chicken egg scenario, we came to a point where the plant was a little idle for a few months, and that's a lot of money
Yeah.
to for the company to spend and not make revenue off of. And so that was a lot of on me to get the business going for the plant. Eventually we did, and everything turned out right. But those few months were some of those stressful times in my career, because it was the entire business, all the people, all the money that was invested, all the people that were worked there were kind of hanging on my team and everyone around me's ability to drive a business. And we ran into that problem multiple times, actually, because we would build a new plant, because we had too much business, and that was also a
Yeah.
problem, because then you had to go to customers and tell them, well, we can't fulfill things, and so we're going to build something new for you, and then it would be idle for a bit. And then you kind of went through this wave. The first time was stressful. The second time you went, okay, we're prepared, we know that this will happen, we just have to get through it, and it was less stressful. And so you kind of learned from the mistake, not a mistake, you learned from the challenge to be comfortable the next time it came around. Yeah.
I feel like without the challenges, like the challenges strengthen us because
Hmm.
we get that wisdom that if you weren't willing to take the risk, you don't earn that wisdom.
It's so true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then you use that as like a comfort. Like I've been here before,
Yeah.
which is also a comfort to your clients, I'm sure, because they could tell the difference between someone going, "Oh my God," and "Oh, I know
Yeah.
about this."
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, you tell them exactly what's going to happen. Like, we've done this before. Don't worry. This is what's going to come out next. It might get a little worse. It might get a little better first, but then it'll be all right at the end.
Well, I'm also like a really big proponent of talking about mental health, especially when you're in a state of flux, often working with startups or if you are a
Hmm.
startup. And so, how do you manage your mental health? Like when you go through those times, I'm wondering what you're like in your personal life. Are you snappy? Are you grumpy? Are you like
No,
silent? Like, how do you handle your own wellness to make sure you stay cool through all that?
yeah, I make sure I take my time off and actually like disconnect. I think that's one thing, is making sure that you have X amount of time in the evening, on the weekends, where you just don't touch it. You need to put that in the back of your mind and focus on the rest of your life, because you're working for your life. Like, no one's just working to work. They wanna have a good
Yeah.
time the entire. So that, and then having support around you, obviously friends and family will be there, you can vent to, you can look for support and look for advice too. I mean, you talk about our parents, they've obviously went through experiences like this too, and so going to them and asking them, how did you deal with this? I'm lucky, I don't have kids, and so I'm wondering how they went through something like this with kids too is always a
Yeah.
shock to me. And so it, it was, the amount of times I think about, I would call my mom when I was like 8 at work. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I would hate that right now. But looking for advice from people who have gone through it as well goes a long way. And then also translating that to your leadership style as well, I think, is important. Like, people who report to me, I understand that these things can get stressful. I understand they can become time consuming and leak into your personal life. And making sure that they are disconnecting is also important as a manager. You have to ensure that their mental health is there, and based off your own experience, how do you make sure you're supporting them as much as possible is also critical.
But, like, how do you think you learned that to give yourself, like, the not working 24 hours a day? Was it from experience of, like, burnout, or was it somebody wise told you that you trusted?
It was a pretty much experience in burnout. Like, I'll be honest, nothing has come close to the amount of work my master's was, and so like I would do all nighters all the time just to try to graduate. And so knowing that experience of what burnout feels like, and one, having to power through it because you don't want to spend another year at school if you don't have to. Everything after that became, okay, this is what it feels. You got the comfort from it. You know what it feels like, when to stop, when to move on. And the best part about work is, it's done at 5 o'clock if it has to be. You can work longer if you want, but you're not expected to keep going after that. At least hopefully, that
Yeah.
should be how your work life is. Where school was, if I don't finish this, it's my life that gets impacted, and so it was a lot more stressful. And so everything post my master's has been not as stressful. And so
Yeah.
it was more or less, you went through like the big stressful time and learned from it. So yeah, trial by
Yeah.
fire
I
basically.
remember you wrote a thesis, right? And I don't know how I got my hands on it, if
Oh,
our
you did?
parents shared it or what, but I remember I couldn't finish the first paragraph because there's too many words I didn't know. I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's in another league." Yeah, that was really awesome timing, and I just have to say, because I do get things secondhand, and so it might not all be 100% accurate because, of course, you see your family and you just are so proud of them. But
Hmm.
I honestly admire your guspa for just taking these chances and following your heart and like believing in yourself, because that confidence, like, I feel like I don't know what it is that gives you the confidence to think I can do this versus some other people where they may have the education, they may
Hmm.
have the supportive family, but they don't see it in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my confidence comes from just, I'm a very logical person. If I can think like logically to get to a decision, then I don't question it because it's not my decision. It's just the logical path. And so when you kind of dissociate from your own personal like ideas when it comes to making a decision, it's kind of hard not to listen to it. Obviously, you need to take into account your personal factors, but there's a logical path to most things, and that's, at least that's how I think, and that's how my brain works, and that's translated to, why wouldn't I do that? Because I can't think of an argument against it, type of thing. And that's really what's been a driving aspect. It was more or less, why wouldn't I do this? Whenever things came up, right? And if I couldn't come up with a reason, then I'd just go do it.
Yeah. So you talked about, like, even as a leader, people on your team knowing how hard it is. Do you see them make common errors that you're like, oh, they're going to burn out if they try to keep that up? How
Yeah.
well have they taken your advice or suggestions or feedback if it was a slow down or take time off?
Were appreciative. Some were combative. They go, no, I can do this. I'm like, no, I know you can't. Not saying like I don't believe in you, but it's like, I
Yeah.
know this is going to turn out badly over time. And usually it just comes down to listening to them and their side, because it is a personal decision to keep going with burnout. To be honest, you should address it, but um, it is something that you have to come to the conclusion yourself to stop and take a break and come back to it later. And so, yeah, the ones that were a bit more combative, I'd be like, okay, how about you just slow down here for a second, and then we'll assess it later. And like, you give them the opportunity to keep going if they have to, but you show scenarios where they can keep this work going later if they take a break now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, as you're saying that, it's almost one of the gifts of being with startups or new companies is that you're building the culture, because
Mm.
so many people that I've worked with from long-standing big institutions, it's like, yeah, but the people before us did it this way, or those people are still around and they're saying like, why are you slacking? I had to work hard. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
really interesting to change the dynamic so that everybody can be more resilient. So the
Well, yeah.
company keeps going strong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, your job as a leader is to make sure the team moves forward as effectively as possible, and that means avoiding burnout as much as possible. And there's never a scenario where burnt out people perform better, and so prioritizing your team's mental health and your team's time is really important to make sure that you're successful as a leader as well. Like, you're successful in your team's goals. It all adds up to a positive experience around the team and for the company as well. So, I think there is, yeah, like you said, people take pride in the amount of work they had to do, and maybe the challenges they had to go through, and it can be a little sour, people not having to go through the same challenges, but that's not the right approach as a leader. Like, it doesn't pan out well.
No, I've been hearing that a lot, specifically in medicine for some reason, that some of the older doctors or people in medicine that I've talked to, they say, this next generation's getting it right
Mm.
because they're going in with their eyes open with a little bit more boundaries and like having a starting point that doesn't feel like it's going to fry them.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely the best approach. And again, it's all about your comfort level. Like, I think
Right.
I think some people enjoy working a lot, And if
Yeah.
that's your own personal preference, then go for it. Just understand what your limits are. And the opposite, if you don't, make sure you can be effective in the time you need, right?
Yeah, and for the people who I know that are going through burnout, I always think this is great news because you just found your boundary
Hmm.
that you don't sometimes you have to test it to realize what you're
Yeah,
capable of and what you got to be honest with yourself about.
it's so true. Yeah, I mean, you can't know what to look for until you experience it, right?
Yeah. Well, and okay, I have one last question for you. So you like being challenged. You like
Hmm.
going into things that might take a lot of your effort and like I'm sure it's short windows where you're going all out. What do you do when life happens? Whether it's like an illness or I don't know, it could be like a weather catastrophe or something. How do you handle that? And like what do you do in those situations where it's something out of everyone's control but it impacts you and what you were trying to do?
Wow, I've never actually thought about exactly what I do. I think I'm also like I try to think about what would I be okay with if this happened to someone else and it's impacting me. Um, and maybe I think I'm an easygoing person, so maybe sometimes it's not the right answer, but but I would think of that like if someone told me like this is happening, I can't get this done. How would I react to that? I would try to figure out a scenario where I would hopefully be able to contribute as much as I can without impacting other people as much as I would probably want to avoid. Like it, yeah. I'm trying to think of like scenarios where I've been really sick. One, I obviously take time off and rest, right? But in
Right.
scenarios where I am maybe a little sick and I could probably still get stuff done, I would only do the things that I know would be more annoying to me if they weren't done right now, and then I'd focus on the really high priority stuff. I'd look at my like overall, what is this going to do to me long term if I mess this up or miss this or if this happened and it gets in my way? How can I address it and reduce the damage as much as possible, both from a work and personal side as well, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, like I with the leadership hat on, something that I learned from some challenging times was to talk to the best in people and to have compassion because when it
Hmm.
happens to you, that was one of my lessons learned just recently. As you know, my mom had a second stroke
Hmm.
and it seemed really really bad. The surgeons were really worried.
Hmm.
And so I remember in business a mentor told me, "Kate, pause but never stop because it's too hard to get momentum going." And that was the first time in my life that I knew my capacity and I stopped. I hit the brakes.
Hmm.
Luckily for me, I work with Gia and she was able to reach out to some people to say, "Hey, Kate's not available," which was
Hmm.
a blessing.
Hmm.
But there were some people who took it as a hit to their ego, like, how could you
Really?
disrespect me or not show? And I thought, that's pretty telling
Yeah.
to how you responded. Whereas other people said, "Hey, Kate, I hope everything's okay. Like, I know
Yeah.
this isn't like you." And I just said, okay, of those two, which do I want to be remembered for? Being
Yeah.
the
No.
person who spoke to the best of them, right? Or
Yeah.
assume the worst?
Yeah. No, I mean, I always think nothing's ever actually set in stone. Things come up and people need to be flexible all the time to extents, right? Obviously, things
Yeah.
aren't going to pan out for years. You might have to figure out how you move on. I don't know. It just things that come
Yeah.
up, but people get sick, people get in traffic, like things come up.
Yeah.
Being flexible is something you have to be. And you're right. Some people aren't. How do you deal with that? Sometimes like dealing with people who took an ego hit.
Yeah.
You're right. You question, do I want there to work with them? If I do, how do I resolve it? That's where you start thinking next. It's if I don't, then great.
Yeah.
I learned that I don't.
Yeah. And some of our like common, I don't know, people like people that we have in common raved about this person, but they've only seen them in their best light. So it was
Right.
like, I also want to see how people handle challenges before I work with them or
Fair.
ask them because it's like
Yeah.
very telling about much about the ego it is versus how much they're thinking logically or about the
Yeah.
bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for a resilient workplace, I think leaders have to how you approach someone. Like, there's a lot of work out there about coaches, and if you speak to the best in someone, they play to that, and if you
Yeah.
speak to the worst of them, they play to that.
Yeah, and I mean, as a leader, one of the first things you have to do is you have to be on your team's side first and foremost. It's not a top-down, crack the whip, start doing this work. It's we're doing this together. If a
Yes.
challenge is coming your way, it's coming my way too. And so that means if you need help here, I have to help you because your problems are my problems, and you have to look at it as always a team scenario. And even within your own company, there may be conflict between departments, there may be conflict between upper management and your team, and you're the person who gets to interact with those other people within the company as a leader, and you have to stand up for your team as much as possible, because that's the only way your team's going to be successful, if you're all on the same page and you're all together. And it also turns, you might have a person on your team who isn't contributing from the team perspective, and making sure that you do help them get back into the team is also important. It's all about making sure you treat things as a team, and as a leader, you are part of the team.
Yeah. And I could see how that would make your teams resilient through times of unknown if you feel you're not alone and you feel like
Yeah.
somebody's got your back, as opposed to they're going to use it to throw you
Yeah,
down.
exactly. Yeah. There's nothing worse than playing the blame game. If something went wrong, it's a team issue.
Yeah.
Your team failed, not just a person on the team.
Yeah. So then, just to finish this off, when you think about 2026, what are you going to do for yourself to keep yourself healthy and living your best life and not just getting all the work done?
Yeah, I got into triathlons last year, so I'm doing more triathlons this year, and so my schedule is mostly filled with working out and or going to see friends, and that's really, I'm just prioritizing the fun things on my off times, basically.
Yeah. Well, I'm not biased at all. You are awesome. You are amazing. Keep that shit up. And I'm so grateful that you were willing to meet today. You had time to meet. And is there anything else that you want to mention, or anything else you want to say to anybody if they're in a similar position to you, or they aspire to be in a position like you?
I just want to say thanks for having me on. This is great. I also like following everything you're doing, so it's exciting to be a part of it now.
I like to tell everybody, I'm like, I'm the matriarch of the cousins on the O'Keefe side. I'm watching over all of them. So yeah, this is awesome. And I know we have a big family reunion coming up, so
Yes.
hopefully I'll get to see you then. But
Yeah, absolutely.
just, if you stick with me for 1 minute when I wrap this up, just so I can say goodbye to you personally, I'm going to end that here. And I just want to say, people, if you knew how impressive this young man is, and I'm going to share all of his information online, definitely check out his journey and the incredible work that he's doing. He is one of those solid people that you know is going to do big things, but you can do it too. And just hearing a lot of how Sean's handling this with your fitness and your friends and your community, like, I think that's a huge thing that people undervalue, is how important that community is. Thank you for your input and for sharing today, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we'll see each other soon. Okay, bye everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this podcast with those who need to hear it. It truly makes a world of difference in getting this message out there. And I would love to connect with you. So go check out my website at kate-hansen.co. And remember, success is best when it's aligned. See you